Good morning, All Saints Church. I hope everyone is safe and healthy and happy this morning and that you have had a joyful holiday weekend. My name is Juliana Serrano. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And if you don't already know me, I am the Senior Associate for Peace and Justice and the Office for Creative Connections at All Saints Church. Mike is on his vacation break for the summer, and so he asked that I take on the Rector's Forum this Sunday, which I will do with pleasure because we get to talk about something that matters a lot to me and a program that we are starting within our Peace and Justice Ministries, and that is about getting our congregation to be 100% voting congregation, which is going to be a big endeavor, but something definitely feasible, and I think something that's going to bring our community a lot of energy in the coming weeks and months to come. And it is especially important since we are celebrating this holiday weekend of independence to talk about our democracy and our participation in this democracy, in which case voting is one of the most explicit ways that we can show up and have power. And so we are excited to have some fantastic panelists here with us today that I will introduce you to in just a moment and get our conversation going. For you all to know that we plan on running either, right up until Children's Chapel which starts at 11 a.m. and we anticipate not interfering in the Children's Chapel time at all today. We may end a little bit early. That will depend on you and what kinds of questions you feed myself and the panelists. So I just want to encourage you to please use that Q&A box that's available at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And so as the presentation unfolds today, if you find yourself having a question, you can go ahead and type it in that box. And towards the end of our program, we will do our best to answer those questions in a timely fashion. So without further ado, I'm going to invite all of my panelists to join the video and audio. And I hope that you all are there. Yay, Lisa, I see Martha, hi, and Lorynne. 3 wonderful women are going to be joining me in the conversation today, and so I'm very grateful for their time. I'm hoping that we can first begin with Martha Zavalla, who is the new president of the Pasadena chapter of the League of Women Voters. Hi, Martha. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you all?
We're doing great, I think, so far. We're really happy to have you. Thank you for taking time out of your weekend to be with us.
Oh, this is great. I love the campaign you're going to launch, or have been launching, actually. I can see that you've been working on it for several months, which is the only way to really be effective. And I want to thank you for the invitation and this opportunity. I know that your community has been a real partner in many ways to the League of Women Voters, and a lot of our members actually are part of your congregation. So yes. I think we really have an affinity here for some of the goals that we want to set toward just having healthy communities, healthy in many ways. So we really appreciate this time. And I know you had some things that you thought, maybe that I could cover. Yeah. And this is a really, you mentioned something about the history of the League in Pasadena, and it goes back 84 years. We just celebrated our annual meeting. June 25th, we had an annual meeting. It was our 84th. And we're doing, we're on a project right now to look at our individual history of the League. As you know, the League is 100 years old. It's actually older than the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which is coming up on August 18th. It'll be 100 years. Well, the League's, the US League started February 14th of 1920. So our League started up in the late 30s. As I said, we've already had 84. And in looking at some of the minutes that we've been trying to gather, it looks like we're still working on the same things. Internally, we've been trying to decide really what our focus should be. And it turns out that a lot of people think we just register voters. And that's not true. We're so much into public policy. And in looking at those minutes, it's exactly that, so we continue that path right now. And some of the things that we're really focused on this year and that we're going to try to move forward on is finishing the work of trying to make sure everybody responds to the census, because that is so critical to our representation. You may be aware that the first thing that happens is after, at the end, at the conclusion, the Census Bureau will give to the president the results. And then from there, it gets presented to Congress. And then from there, it comes back to the local level to do redistricting of everything. All our lines will be redrawn. This time around, it looks as if we're going to lose a congressional seat. If we do not get in there, some of the other states are growing. And as you know, there's a cap on representation in Congress through the House, right? It is capped, because can you imagine how large a place we would need? Anyway, so that is a big deal for us. We really want to push that out. So if you are going to touch all your congregation about voting, it would be really great if you could touch them about completing the census also, and extending that. So that's one of our things. We want to make sure we're there, and then get engaged with all the local commissions that are going to do redistricting. We also have a campaign for the November election called Schools and Communities First, where you'll hear, stories about what's going to happen to Proposition 13. Yes. Well, it's not intended to remove any protections to residents. It is to do a more fair assessment of large corporations and try to get funding for our communities, because, California is one of the states that doesn't spend enough money on the schools. So that is another thing that we are doing, because as you know, we're a very active political arm. We're nonpartisan, but we do have policies. The other thing, as you mentioned, we do have a social justice arm. And we're focused on trying to make sure that we have AB 392, which has to do with police force in the state, and trying to make sure that our local police departments are actually implementing it properly. Yes. And thoroughly, and getting down into those weeds about how they train officers and all of that. So that is one of the things we're working on. The other big thing is, of course, the November election. And LA County launched their new system in March. They are going to continue to use that. It was effective in many, many ways. One of the problems that they had on election day, on March 3rd, I believe it was that the lines were very long on election day. So our mission is going to ask people to do early voting. Don't wait until until election day. You'll have 10 days of voting. Use them. But bigger than that, because of COVID and because of the long lines, yes, every single one of the 5.5 million registered voters in Los Angeles County are going to get vote by mail ballots. That means that a full 2.5 million people who have never used that are going to receive vote by mail ballots, as long as they're a registered voter and they're on the rolls by the first week in October, because there's a deadline. They can't mail something out to somebody who's not registered. They don't have an address. Sure. The vote by mail ballots will go out the first week in October. I believe October 5th is the first time they're going to get sent out. So we have until then to try to reach people, to make sure they understand how to do that. Seniors, for example, who may have just relocated to residential homes that they've re-registered. So those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure we do. Over and above that, in-person voting will continue, because there are those who are not going to be reach the appropriate age until after the deadline. And, so there are people that may have moved. There are a lot of people and reasons why to keep that open. And if we can reach people and send them to the polls, even though they're not registered, because they can do same day voter registration, still vote. And so that is one of the big pushes. The other thing that we are focusing on is making sure there are about 10, 12 state ballot measures. And of course, we do the pros and cons. This time we're going to try to make sure they're all recorded in advance, and that maybe we have town halls, Zoom town halls of some sort, because we can't really go out in person. Right. And have those recorded, but then have somebody answer questions and have as many people as possible. So if you're interested in having that for your community, let's get you on our calendar. The same thing goes for candidate forums. We're now struggling with the technology to try to figure out how to handle all of that, because it's all new to us, but we're trying to come up to speed right away. So I think that's one of the biggest issues we're struggling with this summer, is to find the right technology platform. Yeah. But I think I'll leave it there. And then if anybody has any questions, that I can answer. But thank you,
Martha. That is so helpful. As I was helping to develop this program, I thought we cannot have a conversation about voting without checking in with our local chapter of the League of Women Voters. You all are an impressive group, and you're absolutely right that we have a lot of All Saints members who are connected. And I was the member once, and I it's so funny, Martha. I thought, oh geez, I better renew my membership before I start the forum on Sunday with the League. And I regret that I didn't get to do it this weekend, but I will do that very soon. It's so important to become a member. You provide a tremendous resource to our community, and I'm really looking forward to the education work that you all will be engaging in the months to come around those ballot measures, because I believe there are going to be many on the California ballot this election. I think there's 13 different ballot initiatives. I don't know if yes. You have the number, or maybe Lisa, when we get to you in a second, you might know better as well. But I think there's going to be a lot of education work that has to happen with voters, right, to get them really informed and prepared for the voting experience come November. Martha, if I could just ask you a personal connection, I would love to know what keeps you in this work, what got you started with the League, and why this area of focus for you personally. I would love to know that.
Well, what happened is that for years, somehow somebody at work mentioned that they would go to the League website to get the lowdown on exactly what these ballot measures were about, because I would say, what is this, And then I would go and see that there's two sides to every story, right? And that also you have to look deeply, because sometimes saying yes actually means no to what you want.
That's right.
So that was my history. But it just so happens that, Monterey Park is one of our 13 communities that we provide a service to, and my sister lives there. And so there was a League member that's her friend. And she said, why don't you join the League? They had a dinner for prospective people. I went in there and I just felt the connection to everyone, and the kinds of, ideas that we had about what a community can be, and how to reach people, and for it to be so all-inclusive, that there's no requirements for people to actually be a part of that, or even to be voters. I just really felt the connection, that kind of giving to the community. And, I think that I benefited a lot from that. My family has a history of having been helped by welfare. I'm a welfare kid, and so I always have this really optimistic view of what government can do. And so I thought, how do I contribute to that, to make sure someone else in need gets help?
That's right. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us, and congratulations on being the president of our chapter. 84 years is absolutely incredible, and a lot of wonderful work has been done in that time, and we look forward to our partnership. I know, Martha, there's some questions that have come in through the chat box. We're going to maybe field those to you towards the end if you
Sure.
can stay with us. We're going to move on now to my friend Lisa Thornton, who I'm so excited. Thank you for being with us, Lisa. Lisa and I go back more than a couple of years, having worked together, and I'm really happy to introduce her to you all. I do have a formal bio to read on Lisa to make it official. But you're doing really great work, and I think folks should know about it. So Lisa is the Data and Research Director for Pico, California. Prior to joining Pico, California team, Lisa was an organizer at LA Voice for about 6 years. After finishing her MDiv at Fuller, in 2002, Lisa came to LA Voice as a Faith and Democracy Fellow to work with colleagues around the state for an effort to win Proposition 30, which was essential funding for our schools. She continued to work in Los Angeles on school funding, accountability, and numerous state and local measures to win funding for housing and services for people experiencing homelessness. She also supported organizing efforts here in Pasadena, and that's how Lisa and I came to know each other. We worked on some stuff together. She was born and raised in Washington, D.C., attending public schools and developing an awareness of inequality and discrepancy in opportunity, particularly for students of color, and a deep commitment to voting rights, as her hometown was without federal representation and frequently a pawn in others' political agendas. Boy, isn't that true. So Lisa, welcome this morning. It's so good to have you.
Good morning. It's really fun to be here.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
We're having a fun conversation about voting.
Yes, let's dive in.
Right.
You want to kick it off? You want me to?
Well, yeah, I think, folks in the audience might not know about Pico, California.
Yep.
And so I'm hoping you can share with folks what Pico is and what your role specifically entails at Pico. And then obviously a part of that is what's Pico's connection to LA Voice, and how do they work together?
Yeah, absolutely. I work for Pico, California. Pico, California is the largest statewide faith-based community organizing network. It's a multiracial, multi-faith effort comprised of 10 local organizations, of which LA Voice is one of them. So we're working in 18 counties across Los Angeles, everywhere from San Diego County, coming up Inland Empire, LA, Central Valley, Bay Area, Sacramento, and all the way up. We have a powerful effort up in Humboldt and Del Norte counties, doing very creative work. Pico, California works to basically engage the voice of faith people, support them in power building to achieve the goals they have for their communities around particularly racial and economic justice. And we got into the conversation around voter engagement. Well, it had always been a conversation, but it was something that our organization dove into pretty intentionally in 2012 with the opportunity of Proposition 30 and to win funding for public schools, greatly needed funding. Pico, California is a member of an umbrella organization. It's a coalition. It's a network of other organizations called the Million Voters Project here in California. And the Million Voters Project is an effort to transform the electorate in California to one that truly represents the needs of the people, as well as win essential ballot measures that relate to, to the resources and other opportunities we need in our communities. So Martha actually did a really great job of setting up a lot of that stuff. The 2020 ballot is going to be a ton of fun. There's a lot on it. We also are part of the Schools and Communities First campaign, now Proposition 15. And I name all of that recognizing that we're a nonpartisan organization. All Saints is a nonpartisan organization. So you can make your internal decisions about how you present that information to your congregation. We are also looking at a racial justice slate for the fall, in addition to the reform of Prop 13 with Schools and Communities First. There's also going to be 2 ballot measures to increase voting access. One will allow people who are on parole to vote, which is a new and pretty significant win, even to get that on the ballot. There's also a ballot measure to allow some 17-year-olds to vote if they if they're going to be 18 by the general, they can vote in the primary. So great news for expanding voting rights. There's also a couple of ballot measures, that have to do with other rights restoration and access and things like that. And there's a couple of ballot measures that we're opposing that are going to be regressive for what our communities need. And again, if anyone wants to talk offline about that, I'm happy to be a resource. But I don't want to take all of our time up plugging,
That's so
plugging
helpful.
ballot measures.
It is a helpful reminder, right, that like as a 501c3, we are nonpartisan and we can't be candidate based in any of our organizing work and our advocacy, but we can focus on issues. And with the ballot initiatives, inevitably, these are social justice issues that are coming to the voters. And so it is incredibly important that we be educated and informed so we know exactly how to vote, especially as Martha mentioned, right? Like sometimes a yes vote means a no, and sometimes a no vote means a yes, and it can get very, very daunting unless you're in the weeds, right? And I know Schools and Community First is a really important campaign that LA Voice and other organizations in the Los Angeles County area and California have been focused on for a really significant period of time. Lisa, I don't know if you knew this, but Governor Jerry Brown was with us last week.
Oh, all right.
I tried to pop in a question about Community First and was unfortunately unsuccessful in getting a definitive answer.
Of course.
From that one, yeah. But it's incredibly important, right, as we talk about these ballot measures. So I do want to sort of transition a little bit to like the voting aspect itself. And this campaign, this 100% voting congregation campaign that All Saints is going to be launching officially in just about a week or so. We've got lots of volunteers who are already interested in the work, but we have many more who aren't familiar with the campaign at all. So I'm hoping, Lisa, you can share with folks what this initiative aims to do. And, how did it get started? I mean, you talked about the value, the importance of voting, but how did, PICO and LA Voice say, we want our membership to get themselves to be 100% voting congregations? Do you have some backstory on that?
Yeah, most definitely. I'm not going to have the dates correct. So I'm going to ballpark the dates for you because a lot of that was powerful work that happened before I came into my roles within the PICO family and at LA Voice. And and I think I have a typo in my bio. I joined LA Voice in 2012, not 2002, because I'm not that old.
Sorry.
But it's okay.
Yeah.
The origins of the program are really clergy recognizing the value and power of the relationships that people have within their congregation. I am a person who very deeply believes in the power of organized communities of people who come together with shared values, shared worldview. I had actually a professor at Fuller say to me one time that that organized religion has something that no other entity has, which is the power to convene. There's nothing else in the world, maybe football, but that's not happening literally every week, where you can get millions of people to show up in a specific location every single week. Forever, really. And there's power in that. And so it was congregations coming together to say, we're going to do this as a community. For a lot of congregations that have people who have been historically disenfranchised from the voting process, people of color, people who are new citizens, people who are non-English speakers, formerly incarcerated folks. There are many barriers that show up, and being in a space where people in a congregation can help and support them in order to actually step into their own power. We also have congregations who are coming from more affluent or more indirectly impacted by what's happening in our world right now. And folks who have been part of the voting electorate for years, but who may still have people in their congregations who are not voting on a regular basis or don't understand what's in the ballot. And so for people to collectively come together and say, we're going to do this thing as a from my faith tradition, church family, people use many different languages around that. So I'm also a member of Pasadena Mennonite Church. And so who is also trying to figure out this conversation. Now, PMC is a much smaller community than All Saints, so we don't have nearly as many people to track down as you all do. But so, you know, I think if I think back to when I came to LA Voice, this was actually a project that was already starting in some form. It didn't quite have the same like structures attached to it, but it was clergy. I'm thinking specifically of Pastor Cummings up in Oakland, who talked about the value and importance of his congregation showing up collectively, because then also after, you can hold your elected officials accountable in a more powerful way. Like Martha was talking about the social justice work we do throughout the year, that if your elected officials know this is 100% voting congregation, they're gonna pay attention to the things that you're asking them to do. Whether or not you talked about voting for them or not, they understand power. And so it's really helpful and important for us to understand power as well.
That's right. I mean, it's a huge endeavor, especially for some congregations, as you mentioned, like ours, which is a large one, but definitely feasible. I'm curious if you have a sense of how many different congregations in the state of California, or maybe even in the LA County area, are taking on this work, and dare I say, maybe especially this general election coming up in November, more so than at any other point in time. Like, how big is this movement of getting to be 100% voting congregation?
Sure, totally. I'll let me speak to LA more specifically. One of the exciting things about PICO is that all of our organizations are completely independent from each other. So everybody dives into things differently. We're very much grassroots driven. And so I don't have the concrete numbers for everybody. I will tell you that PICO California, through all of our organizations, is over 650 independent faith institutions.
Wow.
And in those 10 organizations, maybe, yeah, I might say half of them are making a really intentional effort. But actually, you shouldn't quote me on that, because I don't have the exact number. But I will tell you there are 15 other congregations within LA Voice who have said we are going to be 100% voting. So that's across LA County. And then there's another 30 who are engaging in the Schools and Communities First campaign, as well as census outreach. And I'll double on Martha's plug for the census, that the census deadline, given COVID, has actually been extended to October 31st.
Right.
Which is 4 days before Election Day. So it has to be one conversation. It has to all happen together.
Yeah.
And it's both conversations, for us at least, around Prop 15 and Prop 15, Schools and Communities First, the same.
Yes.
That it's all about funding and resources for our communities, which, given COVID, is dire right now.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I appreciate the census comment, because we did do a lot of pushing pre-COVID, right? Like, it's coming. I mean, we did like weeks and weeks of it's coming, so that people knew that they were going to get their mailing, and that we were encouraging them to participate as soon as possible. And even fairly recently, I kind of followed back on social media to make sure that folks are participating. But with this extension, right, there's really no excuse to not participate if you haven't done so already. And so I just want to join in that plug that if you haven't done your census, haven't filled it out, that there's still time. And it is really important. That the reality of losing a congressional seat is just, it's too much to actually absorb at this point in time, when things feel so awful already. Losing a seat just seems like an added stressor that I think we want to avoid. So I appreciate that plug. Lisa, I do want, before I go into my presentation, because I will be presenting to the congregation in a moment, a PowerPoint to talk about the campaign and sort of the timeline that All Saints is going to undergo. Can you give us just some quick, brief logistics about how these campaigns even work? And in particular, and I know you're really into data, and I am also, can you tell us how a congregation like All Saints Church can even tackle this idea of becoming a 100% voting congregation and what your data plays in that.
Yes, most definitely. Well, judging by my title in the data and research chapter, data is one of my love languages, and deeply important because it's power, right? It's power, and that you can actually see and you can tell the story of your work, and you can see where you need to grow and learn. And that's a whole other webinar where I teach you about power of data organizing. But so one of the essential parts that comes along with 100% voting is actually looking at your data and being able to know what kind of progress you're making. Who do you need to target? Who do you need to talk to? Of course, you can talk to everybody, but if you may not have the capacity to talk to everybody, there are going to be people in your congregation who vote all the time, who are decades-long members of the League of Women Voters, who never miss an election, who take their kids to the election. You probably don't need to call those people and say, hey, are you going to vote? Because the answer is probably going to be yes.
Yeah.
There might be other people in your congregation, though, who are first-time voters, who are brand new, who might not be registered. And there's all sorts of reasons why that may be the case. They may be new to California. They may be new to the US. They may be newly out of incarceration. There's all sorts of stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And those conversations can be deeply, deeply powerful. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do through LA Voice is we actually take your congregation member list and we match it against the voter file. Mm-hmm. It's important for folks to know that the voter file data is public data. Anything you put on your voter registration form is public data, not your social security number. That's not. But that's all accessible. You could drive down to Norwalk right now and ask for a list of all the registered voters in LA County, and it would cost you some money and it would take a really long time, but they would give it to you. Mm-hmm. So we utilize a data system called PDI. It stands for Political Data Inc. And that basically lets us upload a list, and it comes back and tells us these are all the people that we found, same name, same address. I want to always remind people systems like this that however sophisticated and wonderful they are, at the end of the day, they're just wonderful, dumb robots. They only do the thing that you tell it to do. And if you don't tell it to do this other thing, it's not a mind reader. And so we always have folks who their name registered with the congregation might not be the name that's their legal name, or they've moved, their address is different. There's all sorts of things, or they lived in Sacramento and now they're here, and all sorts of stuff like that. And so it usually spits you back a list, and then we get a list of these are all the people that didn't match. We used to say these are all the people that aren't registered. We actually realized that's not true. Right. A lot of those folks aren't registered. There's these little nuance things, so we have to dig in a little bit and try to figure out who those people are. Mm-hmm. In a year, like Martha mentioned, everybody getting a ballot in the mail, it is critical to make sure that everybody is registered at the address that they live in, because that ballot is going to go to your registered address. And if they don't have that right address, you're not going to get your mail-in ballot. So I know one of the things y'all are prioritizing is calling through all those people who didn't match to ask them things like, hey, are you registered? Is it possible you're at a different address? Can we find your different name, this and that? And be able to whittle that list down till you get to a list of people who aren't registered, and then you can send them the link to go ahead and register. In a normal year, I would say everyone you talk to, you should tell them, get a vote by mail ballot, switch your registration to be vote by mail. And there's always people who say, but I love going to my polling place. You can still go to your polling place. You just drop your ballot off. But in the time of COVID, everybody making sure you're getting a vote by mail ballot to your accurate address. Mm-hmm. The other part of this thing is, as you all get closer to the election, relationships matter. If you get a call from somebody you don't know who says, I'm part of this organization I've never heard of, and they say, are you going to vote in November? A, are you even going to answer that phone call? I'm probably not going to. Right. B, if they say, if I don't recognize you, I'm probably going to go, okay, thanks. I probably won't, because I'll talk to those people all day long. But, for the most part, most people, like, I don't know who you are, but if I get a call from my church, even if I don't know the volunteer, but they say, hey, this is so-and-so from PMC, this is what we're doing, I'm going to listen.
Right.
Well, I'm not going to hang up on you. So
Yeah.
that's the first step.
Yes.
Well, I'm less likely to hang up on you. It also creates a way for you to talk about the multiple issues.
Mhm.
If any of you all who are on this webinar have done volunteer work, get out the vote work, even, you know, it's, people don't want to stay on the phone with you for very long. And if you have to say to somebody, hey, we really want to encourage you to vote yes on Prop 15, Prop 16, Prop 17, vote no on Prop this, and vote yes on this, like, you're done after the first ask. But
Yeah.
in the context of someone from your congregation and your relationship, you can also text out information to people. You can send it in. You could say to people, hey, you know, Pastor Mike, is that his title? Rector? Mike. Mike, you know, Mike is going to email you important information. It's coming tomorrow morning. Look out for that email.
Mhm.
And then you can actually send more detailed information to people, but it's already like pinged for them, something to pay attention to. So there's many layers to this work, but it really starts with running your data through the voter file. And then that data, keep in mind, is all protected. There's a signed MOU that goes along with that. MOU, sorry, is a memorandum of understanding. It's like a little contract that says, this is what your data's for. Only you can contact your people. Nobody else is calling your people. They're not going into some campaign data anywhere. We're not selling your information to anybody anywhere. It's all very tightly controlled what happens to the data. So.
That's great. That's a perfect segue.
Yeah.
So I now would love to share with everyone how we are going to get started on becoming 100% voting congregation ourselves. So this is our plan for moving forward. All right, so we are going to partner with LA Voice and inevitably Pico, California to make this possible. As Lisa mentioned, we have already handed over our data and compared it to the PDI, and we were able to determine that we have about 1,400 people in our database who do not match to the voter file. And so these are individuals who are either not registered to vote for any number of reasons, including that they may not be eligible to vote. So that's something that we are going to broach with our volunteers as the phone calls are happening to make sure that we handle that very sensitively. But there may be several people who are in fact eligible to vote, but may not be either registered, or there is some kind of discrepancy between the data that we have in our database and the data that's in the voter file. And so that's what we want to check out over a period of time. This campaign is going to recruit volunteers to ensure that folks who are eligible to vote are in fact registered to vote, that folks are informed about what's on the ballot and how to vote. As we mentioned, there's lots that's going to be on the ballot, and voting is already different, as we noticed in the primary. This general will be different, and even more so since we're going to go to everybody getting a vote by mail this year. So just, you know, updating folks about the new process, and then also ensure that folks actually vote on or before Election Day. So what we're going to start in just about a week or so is the phone banking. So we are recruiting volunteers to be part of a phone bank team. And this will be exactly like Lisa described, members of the congregation calling other members of the congregation by phone to check in to see if they're registered. So volunteers will be assigned a group of church members that they are going to take responsibility for the duration of the campaign. And they're going to contact those members by phone and check in about their voter registration status and provide any help as needed. And that additional help as needed may need to include email communication. And so that will be another function of the volunteer task, is to, you know, follow up with additional information as needed via email. That process will take place all of July and August. And we have 2 trainings that are going to come up to get all of those volunteers ready to go. So one happening this coming Thursday, the 9th, and then next Monday, the 13th. They're at different times. If you're interested in volunteering for this effort, please go to the Sign Up Center that's available on our website. It's at the top portion of our website. You'll see Sign Up. You click on that. You'll see the 2 dates and the 2 different times. One is in the evening and one is the morning. So hopefully we can capture a lot of folks that way. But by volunteering, you are going to experience a training that's going to train you how to talk about the initiative with others, including those folks that you are going to be phone calling. How to appropriately check in about registration status. Again, we want to acknowledge that while this information is public, for some folks, we may be calling and they may not be eligible to vote, and that's why they didn't match with the PDI because of maybe former incarceration or because they may be undocumented residents and not eligible to vote. And so we want to make sure that what we're doing is not getting information about why they may not be registered voters, but ensuring that if they are eligible to be voting, that they've got all the information that they need and the support that they can get in order to get registered and participate in that November election. We're going to train volunteers on how to capture that data. So again, we may be learning more about our membership as a result and hopefully updating information about them as well. And then you'll be trained on how to follow up with questions and concerns and provide additional information needed to the folks that you will be calling. The second part of this campaign will be to provide voter information, and that will unfold September and October. So as time progresses and volunteers are reaching out to their list, their group members, and building relationship, they will revisit folks on their list and provide educational information to them about the upcoming ballot measures. This is going to be a really wonderful time where we can potentially partner with the League of Women Voters and connect folks to those online mechanisms for education about the ballot measures. So a volunteer may, for example, reach out to you and say, and I'm seeing Lorynne on camera right now, so I'm going to use you, Lorynne, as an example. If I were calling you when you were on my list, Lorynne, I would follow up and say, hey, do you know about Prop 15? And do you want to learn more about it? There's going to be this educational opportunity that the League is doing, or that maybe even All Saints will be doing on said date. Make sure to tune in, that sort of deal. And that will happen through our relationships, through our group lists. Volunteers will also provide vote by mail instructions. Again, because everyone is going to get the vote by mail opportunity, and that may be a new experience for some folks, our volunteers will be trained and instructed on how to give information to folks about how to get that vote by mail ballot in the way that they desire. For those who want to continue to vote at a polling location, even in spite of COVID, there is still going to be polling locations. And so our volunteers will have accurate information about where those polling locations will be for folks and how folks can safely get connected to them for in-person voting 10 days before and on actual election day. And then these volunteers will be able to identify any other needs that may come up that may be a source of support for voters within the congregation. That may be something like access to mail. Maybe somebody doesn't have access to a mailbox easily. And so maybe volunteers can make note of that, and we can create a support infrastructure to make sure that that ballot gets in the mail. Some folks may want to vote in person. And so if they do and have transportation issues, how do we make note of that and then build an infrastructure of support prior to voting? So the volunteers will be trained prior to the start of this phase as well, so that they have everything that they need to support the folks on their list. And then finally, the third phase of this endeavor will be to ensure that everyone who's eligible to vote actually votes. And that means on election day or the days leading up to. And so volunteers will check in again with their group members that they've been assigned and make sure that they have voted, that they capture that data as much as they possibly can to confirm that the group members that they were responsible for have voted in the election, and that we can really tabulate all those responses and really get the sense that we have become a 100% voting congregation. At the completion of all of this, my hope is to get volunteers to again follow up with their group members and check in and administer an informal survey of sorts to check in with them to see how the experience was. What did it feel like to have a partner in this voting experience for the November election? Was it a positive one? Did it feel intrusive? Did it feel so good that we need to expand this work in some other form? Something like that. We just want to get a sense of what the experience was like for members of the congregation. So I just want to stress some key points before we check in with Lorynne, who is the chair of our Peace and Justice OCC Vestry Committee. This campaign is going to be a 5-6 month campaign. We're sort of estimating, beginning ASAP and going through at the very end, and latest would be December. We certainly need lots of volunteers. I'm so pleased that we have about 45 people or so who have signed up and expressed interest to date. A lot of those volunteers are members of Peace and Justice Ministries who have been informed about this project for several weeks and actually probably a couple months now. And also through other communication mechanisms, including word of mouth, we've been able to recruit volunteers, but more are welcome. The more volunteers we have for this effort, the better it's going to be. So please keep that in mind. I think that this is a relatively low time commitment for volunteers. I'm estimating between 4 and a maximum of 8 hours a month will be spent. All of this will be done from the comfort and the safety of your own home. All the trainings that will be required will be Zoom trainings, webinars. There won't be any physical meetings or gatherings in order to make this possible. So this is going to be relatively easy, again, to happen from the safety of your own home. Because of the size of our community, and Lisa mentioned this a moment ago, we're going to prioritize those folks who appear to not be matching with the PDI file. And so, as I mentioned a second ago, that's about 1,400 members. So that's going to be a lot of phone calling. But that's going to be our priority, acknowledging that there are lots of members, probably over 2,600 other folks in our database ended up matching. And we can tell that there's lots of voter participation already from those 2,600 plus. So we're not going to reach out to you if you have been an avid voter and have been a consistent voter. You shouldn't be expecting a phone call from us. But again, our priority will be those who appear to not have matched with that voter file, so we can confirm their status and get them the support needed if they're not registered to vote. This is a community building opportunity for all, and I really want to stress that. We learned a lot from our community response team as we entered in the stay-at-home order, and we had volunteers reaching out to some of the most vulnerable in our community just to check in and make sure that they had everything that they needed, that there was a deep sense of community built by these phone call check-ins. And I think that this campaign will be an extension of that work. You all as volunteers will get the opportunity to meet people you probably have never met before. And likewise for the phone, the person receiving the phone call. And my hope is that through these communications, that we will feel connected, we will feel valued and loved in spite of the fact that we can't be physically together these days. And then I also just want to stress that this is going to be an opportunity to update our database also. And so we're going to learn more about our membership and those who are part of our community and make sure that we have the most accurate information for being in touch with them. And probably the most important thing to stress is that we want our faith values represented in November 2020 in terms of what ballot initiatives get passed or fail, and who gets elected into office also. And so, this participation from our community in the November 2020 election is incredibly important. So let's make sure we do what it takes together to make that happen. I'm just going to end right here just with that reminder that if you're interested in volunteering, that you can sign up via the sign up link at the top of our All Saints website. So go there right now if you're interested, pick one of the trainings, and we'll get you signed up. It's mandatory training to get started, so please pick one of those 2 dates. And that if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me. This is my email address. It is the best way to get in touch with me these days. I'm checking email all the time, so please make note of that email address and get in touch with me as needed. So with that, Lorynne, hi, good morning.
Hi.
So Lorynne is the chair of our Peace and Justice OCC Vestry Committee, and it felt really important to bring you on, Lorynne, to share with All Saints about the conversations we've had within our Vestry Committee about this campaign, this initiative, and I'd love for you to share out about what folks are saying and how they're responding to us engaging in this 100% voting congregation initiative.
Great. So when we talked about this, for those of you who don't know, the P&J committee is really a collection of all the ministries at All Saints that work on social justice issues. And most of what we do is really hands-on. So suddenly in this pandemic, we can't do a lot of the stuff that we've been doing. And we had to try to figure out how we adapt, how we're going to continue to reach out to the community. So when Juliana presented this, they just enthusiastically embraced it. Everybody said, yes, we should do this, because even people like me who are old and can't get out and be around people because of health issues, we can do this because it's from home. And I'm sure that a lot of you may have had to cut back on your volunteer activities and things that you do. And this is a way that you're going to be able to reach out to people and still make a difference in the community, but you're safe at home. And so we've had a good response from our committees, but as Juliana said, we really need more people. And I just really encourage you to take advantage of this training. It's going to be a good experience for you. I've done phone banking before. And so this is going to be a great opportunity. And give her a call, email her, sign up. We want you to join us in this.
Thanks, Lorynne. That's so helpful. So we have a few minutes left, and I do want to field some questions that have come through the Q&A box. I have a question here from Mary asking whether or not volunteers must live in LA County. Absolutely not. So if you live outside of LA County and you're interested in volunteering, you are still welcome to participate in this effort. Also, Laura asked the question about individuals like herself who are regular attendees but maybe not official members of All Saints Church. I will say that if we have your information in our database, we consider you a member of our community. You may not be a pledging member per se, but that's really not what we're talking about. We're talking about all those people who have become part of the All Saints community and family, so much so that we have your contact information. And so if we have your contact information, we will be reaching out to you. And if you're not an official member, you're also welcome to be a volunteer for this endeavor if you're still part of our All Saints community. I have a couple questions here that might be great for Martha. I know one question came in about, let me go back up to it, using stadiums as polling sites. Apparently the city of Atlanta in Georgia has done this. Do you have any sense, Martha, if the state of California or maybe even LA County will be pursuing sites like that for voting in this November election?
Not yet. I'm not specifically aware of them using stadiums. I know that they're trying to find locations that are larger than they were before, maybe not having the ones that are so tightly, you know, where people are really shoulder to shoulder and there's not enough space. I know that they're all of the workers are going to have PPE or the protective gear, that they're going to have some available for the voters themselves, that they will space them out with their distancing, but I'm not aware of them specifically using stadiums. They have until they actually mail out the voter guides, yeah, to nail down all of the facilities that they're going to be using. Because they did get a lot of feedback about where they had some, you know, some real glitches with a lot of people backed up. Some of it had to do with the check-in procedures, which they're revamping completely, but I'm not aware of them using a stadium, but I will be aware fairly soon. They're really concerned because, as you know, the voting is now technology supported, and what it requires just to set up the voting centers, that given that it's in November and it could be raining and it'll be late October, they have a lot of considerations, you know, in terms of using stadiums. It's possible, you know, that they'll open up the convention centers, things like that, any larger thing that's enclosed maybe, and where they can lock down the equipment so that it's not tampered. So I'm not sure what Atlanta or their setup is and how they vote. So I can't really make a comparison at this time, but I do want to make a pitch that we need poll workers, because most of the people that are poll workers are retired people, just the ones that COVID is on the lookout for. And so they need many, many more poll workers who are able to work. And so perhaps there's somebody out there who's willing to do that from your congregation. We really appreciate it. I'll give you the contact information so that they can all apply for poll worker. That would be great.
That's great. Also, we got a question from Dorothy Keene, who asked, with the census deadline being October 31st, voting will be taking place during that period of time also. Do you have any sense whether or not there will be an opportunity for folks to fill out their census form at the very same location where voting is happening?
No, I'm not familiar with that, but we are partners with the Pasadena 2020 counts of the census, and also with the one in Alhambra. But I think that's a really great point. I do know who the census contact is for our area. And so I will make sure I get that question answered, and I will feed that back to you, because Dorothy, for shame, no, you may not know, she's my mentor in the league, and she kind of dragged me into this. Thank you, Dorothy. So yes, that is certainly some information that I'll get for you to find out exactly how they want to take advantage of all these polling places, because you can do it by phone, you can do it by form, you can do it on a laptop, and perhaps we will encourage them to set up house right alongside with voting, because it's such a critical thing. As I said, it's all San Gabriel Valley that is subject to, for us to lose our representation. So thank you, Dorothy, for that, that recommendation.
Certainly a great idea, I think.
Yes.
To get the, the two, for one sort of option there. So folks are asking again what the training dates are. We have one coming up this Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, so on July 9th, and then there will be one on Monday morning, July 13th at 9 a.m. Please go to the sign up center again and sign up for one of those dates so we can get you trained and ready to go as soon as possible. We have just about 2 minutes left, and so I want to open it up for any final comments from our panelists, who were absolutely fantastic. I'm so incredibly grateful for your time. Martha, I do hope we can take you up on that offer to be in better partnership as we prepare for the election.
Yes, I did want to make a comment that right now we're bringing together our other partners to make sure our voice, is not only spread by our partners, but that we can get some synergy going with those partnerships. And all I would ask is find out from you is how you may be doing outreach to people who are not members of churches that are perhaps as engaged, because their membership may be just on the fringes of, trying to stay on top of everything, things being worse for all of our communities right now, especially those who do not have the energy to get engaged in something outside of just trying to get food on the table, maintain a roof on their heads, and things like that. Because those are the communities that we can't reach. Those are the communities that sometimes don't have technology to help them. How do we reach them in this time when you can't go knocking door to door, and where you might really frighten people if you go knock on their door? So that is what we struggle with. And we think that, the churches is one way. So if you can find any churches of affinity churches, that would be really wonderful.
Right. Thanks for that.
And we'll help with any way we can.
Great. Yes. Wonderful. All right, Lisa, I think our time is up. Do you want to just maybe say something, parting words?
Yeah. All that I'll plug in for this is really, COVID is a time where everybody is doing something we've never done before. Those of us who have years of experience in talking to voters can't use the same strategies. And so it's all about creativity. It's all about the power of your relationships and your voices. And also, speaking as a member of Pasadena Mennonite Church, we would love to join in conversations with other folks about voter outreach in Pasadena for people who are not connected because our voter turnout is could be significantly stronger especially from folks who are deeply marginalized. And through PICO and LA Voice, we have access to some really creative technologies that involve texting, that involve other stuff. I won't go into it, but Juliana, you and I can connect offline and loop Zach in, and they have a great team at LA Voice. Tina McKinner is working on their voter engagement stuff. So there's a lot of creative things. And, you know, if you are a volunteer and you're thinking, oh, I wonder if I could talk to my friends through Facebook, 100% you can.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if I could talk to them through WhatsApp. Yes, absolutely. If you want to send them a carrier pigeon writing in the sky, you'll take it. All of that is power in your hands that is going to transform your communities.
That's awesome. Thank you, Lisa. And I look forward to talking more about how we can do that extended outreach into our wider community. Lorynne, thanks for joining us. It was wonderful to have your perspective in the mix, and so I'm very grateful. It's 11 a.m. and it's now time to kick it to Kelly Aaron, who is going to get started with Children's Chapel. Again, my thanks to our panelists, and I look forward to hearing from all of you All Saints about how you would like to engage in this 100% voting congregation initiative. Have a great rest of your morning. Hi, Kelly Aaron.